What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Meaning of the Podcast. I am Andres.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and deeper meanings within their films. And again, RB3, we are not doing a director. We are doing our episode on Netflix. Now, this is something that we've talked about for years, RB3, since we started our podcast. You and I getting into the debates about Netflix. I feel like now is the culmination of that with this episode. We'll talk about controversies. We'll talk about the growth in Netflix, the numbers in Netflix, kind of where the future holds of Netflix itself, the company, and the idea behind Netflix that is kind of dominating our industry right now, the movie industry, which is basically only surviving through Netflix, considering that pretty much every major movie that has come out this year has been through Netflix, except for a few VOD movies. But what is your thoughts, especially now, RB3, 2020, the year of our Lord, what Netflix has become? Because Netflix has kind of become the only thing out there. I mean, there's only one product to watch content and to watch movies, and it's kind of Netflix. And I know there's Hulu and there's Disney Plus and all that, but I feel like the one that consistently puts up new original content and new movies is Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, Netflix kind of has that buzz, has that appeal. They've kind of adopted this model of let's just make as much stuff as possible, see what sticks to the wall, and we'll find an audience that way. And then, they do enough of that. They spend an exuberant amount of money on content to make sure they guarantee that. Now, I've always been a big fan of Netflix from, the onset. I've always been a big fan of streaming from the onset because I think it increases the accessibility for movies, stuff like that. And I think having award-winning filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, Spike Lee, who I'm repping on my shirt right now, working with Netflix gives a lot more opportunity for creative freedom. Steven Soderbergh's another one. Gives a lot more opportunity for creative freedom. It gives a lot more opportunity for expression. It gives a lot more just freedom to express yourself. Charlie Kaufman, another one. I could just go from
Baumbach.
Noah Baumbach. Yeah, exactly.
Two Netflix films?
Yeah, two Netflix films. Yeah, exactly. So there's been mad top of the line filmmakers who Netflix has been going after. Ava DuVernay. The list goes on and on and on forever and ever because that's just how much Netflix is invested in making sure that the content matters. And, for a lot of production companies now that we talk about Warner Brothers, it's usually like, what makes the most money? What's going to make the most money? How are we going to make money? Money. And with Netflix being a model that's particularly invested in keeping people around, the goal is not about what can sell the most. The goal is about what can retain the most. So I think Netflix has kind of perfected the strategy of how can we retain? How can we keep people around? How can we make enough varied content for the cinema goers, for the anime people, for the action movie people, Michael Bay movies and whatnot, and Bright. So they just go all in on what they can go into. And when you look at the statistics, it clearly works out because they currently have 85% of the market share. In fact, in terms of people who actually pay for video content online, they actually currently own 85% of the market with 182.2 million subscribers. So that is by far and away the biggest film studio, biggest film distributor, and the biggest film network in the entire world. So it's kind of incredible to see that kind of growth happen over the last few years.
Yeah, last year there was an article that came out. I believe it was last year. I mean, considering that this time has flown in 2020, it might have been like eight or 9 months ago, but it feels like last year. There was a Forbes article that came out talking about the future of Netflix, considering the pricing of it and considering I think I've mentioned this before, RB3, so you might have heard me talk about it, considering the pricing of it and considering the amount of subscribers they have and how they would have to increase their subscribers in order to justify the amount of money that they've spent/lost throughout the tenure of their business, considering they have so many shareholders and so many people that are waiting to just break even and actually turn a profit. Because I don't think Netflix has ever turned a profit before throughout their history, which is kind of remarkable if you really consider it, if you think about it, because Netflix was always supposed to be this kind of experiment that never really stopped. And considering now it's turned from experiment to pretty much the only way that people watch content now in 2020 because everyone's quarantined. Now studios caught onto it a few years ago, RB3, if you really want to be honest, with their own streaming platforms, their own streaming services. I think every major studio has their own streaming platform. I think there's only one that doesn't, but I forget which one doesn't have one. But HBO is Warner Brothers. You have Peacock now with NBC. You have Disney Plus with ABC. Disney, I'm sorry. Universal. Every single major studio has their own streaming service, so Netflix isn't necessarily original in that sense anymore. I don't know, RB3, because my thing is this: you say that they're set, they're killing it, but I say they still need to turn a profit. So what is the key? Are there going to be continuing to be price increases for Netflix, considering that the prices keep going up every year?
Well, I mean, I think prices going up doesn't necessarily correlate with how much profit they're making, like, necessarily. I think for them, the price going up definitely has more to do with like market dominance, knowing that they are the premier kind of content go. I mean, that's the same thing that HBO does every few years. Like, even though HBO makes a ton of money, they still increase their prices $1 every $2 every couple years or so, just to make sure that people who are staying on and who know that they can trust their content will continue to keep paying for it. So I get what Netflix's approach of like brand loyalty represents, and in terms of like any other studio, it has the most brand loyalty I think out of anybody, just simply because it's the easiest concept in the entire world, right? Like watching movies from home. Ever since Netflix's inception, whether that was through delivering DVDs through mail, or through the beginning days of the subscription service, where there was mostly just like TV shows and all that kind of stuff. The idea was to hey, you don't have to pay all this money for cable. You don't have to go to the movies and see this or that. There's an alternative right here at home for a streamlined price. So that concept kind of went unseen by the studios until they realized that, hey, if we cash in on this with our own properties, with our own stuff, that's why we see all these copycats. But unfortunately, what was kind of been proven through other streaming services attempting this is that even though while Netflix may or may not be profitable, I think they might not be like profitable through like net revenue, but I'm sure they're making a lot of money through stock investments and a lot of money through like all that kind of stuff too. But if they're not like pumping profit, they still have like tons and tons and tons of cash in the bank through through whatever means they have their money from. I don't know, whatever. And of course that comes with the subscribers. Like the more money you have to push product and the more money you have to make product, the more subscribers you're going to be able to keep. The thing is with a lot of these studios, especially with something like a Disney Plus and especially something like a HBO Max, is that they kind of rolled it out without having as much original push behind it and without having that kind of back catalog ready to support it. Netflix has like millions of hours of content and millions of hours of its own original content. And when we look at Disney Plus, it's probably more in the hundreds when it comes to original content. So yeah, it's just a different situation for all these places.
I think a lot of it has to do with branding, though, right? The idea that Netflix has, not Netflix, I'm sorry, but Disney Plus and HBO have branding that go back like 70, 60 years, Disney even more, considering they're Disney, right? Where regardless of anything that's going on, they have the kind of content that families can enjoy and families can go back and watch, that you don't have to necessarily go out and buy the Tangled Blu-ray. You can, watch Tangled on Disney Plus, or you can watch Frozen on Disney Plus. You don't have to go buy the Blu-ray. So that idea of Netflix having that major brand status kind of differentiates it from Netflix. You can even go back to the idea that Netflix is still, you can argue that Netflix is still trying to find their branding, considering that article that came out about a month and a half ago, about the Netflix original productions of movies is still looking for a major franchise movie. in Netflix. They still haven't found it. I think they got their footing, RB3. You can definitely make an argument when it comes to the prestige type movies, considering you had Two Popes, you had um, the Noah Baumbach Marriage Story, you've had Roma, you've had these kind of, you know, Oscar type movies. However, you necessarily haven't had franchise type movies. I think they've had that for TV. You can argue Stranger Things has reached that level, right? But I don't think they've necessarily had that when it comes to movies, and they're still looking for that. A lot of it, what I find funny, RB3, is the idea that they're looking at anime through that, and not just anime in the sense of buying, you know, the rights of certain anime, like Full Metal Alchemist, I believe it's on Netflix, and like Hunter x Hunter, which is also on Netflix, two of the biggest anime ever, that are all on Netflix, but also making, this is a killer, RB3, live action anime, and I think a lot of people have slept on this, but did you know there's a live action Cowboy Bebop that's still supposed to come out? But that's an example of what Netflix is trying to do. They're trying to buy the rights to this anime in order to make that anime into live action and make it this huge spectacle kind of thing that no Hollywood studio has been able to do so far, is to make a good live action anime anything. I don't know what you think of that, of trying to turn that into
Well, I mean, I'm excited for a live action anime, anything from Netflix. I mean, Death Note was terrible. But whatever
there
they
you
do,
go. They already did it with Death Note. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean-
a perfect example.
yeah, I mean,
But
it
they're
came
going to
out-
keep trying to do it, which is crazy.
I mean, they're going to try through all kinds of avenues. It's not necessarily through anime, but even through their Avatar series, right?
Well, that's kind of anime too. You can
Yeah,
make
exactly.
A name.
Yeah, exactly. Anime influence for sure, and even non-anime stuff. I mean, this week on SCM we talked about how they're adapting the Kane Chronicles, right? Which are like those books from Rick Rudin, who wrote the Percy Jackson books, and they're like these Egyptian kind of adventure stories that are kind of mythical and all this kind of stuff, and it's really fun and adventurous. I think, you know, they're finding all of these different properties to adapt because, you know, the whole idea of like IPs, like, you know, carrying franchises, is kind of what we're in now. But, you know, it's funny because people are like, you know, oh, Netflix needs a franchise, and Netflix is like, oh, we need a franchise. What's the point of a franchise, like, for Netflix? Like, there wouldn't necessarily be a point if their whole business model is, let's just keep people here forever. Like, when a franchise ends, it ends. You know, like, when you go to a Harry Potter movie, you're going to the expectations of seeing this movie once a year. You know, you might see it a couple of times while it's in theaters, but it's supposed to be an event when it comes out. Things on Netflix aren't necessarily supposed to be events. They're supposed to be tailor-made for who they're specifically targeting. So it's kind of hard to imagine like a universal, massive blockbuster from a company that is so narrowly specific on making something for every single audience ever.
I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. If I'm Mr. Production Man, I'm gonna be like, I need a franchise for that reason. That you already hit one of them. The idea that you make an event at home. The idea that on October 23rd, this movie comes out, that kind of style of this franchise type movie. And through that, if I'm able to make a franchise movie that's so big that everyone wants to watch it, or everyone watches it at the same time, the exact same time that even like, you know, the site's going to go down. It's so big, right? That's the kind of amplification they want. From there, what I can do with the franchise is what's good about franchises, dude, is selling. That's it. That's all it's ever been. I could put that on t-shirts. I could put that on cups. I could sell it to Burger King, to McDonald's, to Jack in the Box, to like all these, you know, fast food restaurants, 7-Eleven, like all these places that will pay a good premium price to do this joint marketing venture where I'm making hand over fist so much money because everyone wants to have this character on their cup or this character on a t-shirt. So when it comes to branding, merchandising, that's what they're looking for because Disney has that with Star Wars, with Marvel, with all this, the theme parks, with everything they can sell to theme parks. That's kind of what Netflix wants. That's kind of what Netflix has been trying to do so far with the type of franchises they already have or the branding that they have with Stranger Things, right? Even last year, I went to the Halloween Horror Nights last year, and I did the Stranger Things maze, even though a lot of people didn't like it. I thought it was okay. But that is the kind of stuff they want to do. They want to do Stranger Things maze, Stranger Things, basketball court, Stranger Things this. That's what they want. They want to sell it as far as merchandising, which is what Disney has times 100. And that's what Netflix hasn't been able to do. They haven't been able to do House of Cards. Yo, what's up, bro? House of Cards. And everyone's got their House of Cards t-shirt. Like, that ain't it.
That comes down to a whole different like conversation of like, is that even possible in today's generation? Because I don't think that having like a one big universal thing that like everybody could get behind that's original in today's age is nearly impossible. If it's not like a Marvel thing or a Star Wars thing. And by the way, those are things that also started from original ideas. Like Fox didn't say, "Oh, we're looking for a franchise to make the next Star Wars." Like they never said that. They stumbled upon it and it became a thing. It's kind of what Stranger Things happened, right? Like Netflix kind of stumbled upon Stranger Things and just put it out, and it became a massive hit. And that's kind of just been their whole model just for everything. Like, oh, we're just gonna stumble across whatever, see where it goes viral, and if it pops off, it pops off. And we see strange things pop off. We saw a Tiger King thing pop off in the beginning of quarantine.
Still haven't seen that.
Yeah, which is literally the most watched documentary of all time, has been reported. So really, really fascinating stuff. But you think of stuff like Tiger King, which is a blockbuster in its own right. You think of stuff like The Irishman, which is a blockbuster for like the Academy crowd, like the old people crowd, like the crowd like me who like love watching movies like that. But then you get movies like Project Power that might be a big hit for like Joseph Gordon-Levitt fans or whatever. So they do what they can in terms of like here's the crowds that we have. Here's what we're gonna try and push for in terms of like getting as much market appeal as possible. But I don't necessarily know like where they could adapt an IP that can be like a huge hit though, because I don't think that's just something that happens anymore. Like I don't if it's like a Star Wars and a Marvel, like those are IPs that like people grew up with, stuff like that. For everything else, like Masters of the Universe, like nobody cares. Like for stuff like there's so much stuff that they're kind of picking from. The only things that people really care about right now that they're kind of in development for is like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yes, but even that's not even shaping up to be so good. So I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because I this is what they want. They really do want it. They want to sell the stuff to merchandising. Like I said, the Stranger Things maze is one example of what they kind of want to do. They want to theme parkify their content, where they're able to sell it to the theme parks and maybe even get something going for themselves. Because that's the thing that these other major studios have for themselves, whether it's Warner Brothers or Universal or Disney, as they have that theme park thing. They can put it on roller coasters and on rides. That's the kind of stuff that Netflix wants to try and do. And they've been trying to do that, again, last year as an example with Stranger Things for a while. But I do think that it still works, man, when it comes to merchandising. People still want to buy crap. Even young people still want to buy crap when it comes to t-shirts and backpacks and all that kind of jazz. Like look at what Disney did with Baby Yoda. I mean, for crying out loud, that was wild. I had people come up to me that were not Star Wars fans, and they were like, "Yeah, I don't watch Star Wars. I've never seen it, but that Baby Yoda's cute." And I'm like, "What?" But that's an example, right, of what Disney kind of fell upon when it comes to merchandising. The idea that I don't think they even knew that this was going to be such a major hit, what it was. But that's kind of what Netflix wants. And you're right, RB3. It's kind of weird that they're choosing these IPs that are not very merchandisable. I don't know if that's a word. Like Cowboy Bebop or like Masters of the Universe, or I forget what else they have coming out. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Because like you said, the thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender is that it already has a little bit a cloud over its head. So it's not a guaranteed success. And the fans of Avatar: The Last Airbender are the most precious, like, easily offended fans I've ever met, and I'm one of them. Like, they're so like, "Oh, how could you do this? His bending forms this way and not that way." Like, you're never going to make him happy. Even if they made the perfect movie that it's live action, you would never make an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan happy. So even if the creators did stay on, I don't even know if that would have been a success, if I'm being honest. I don't know what you think of that.
Well, it's kind of weird that they are seemingly micromanaging this property and not any other property that they ever make, right? Like, and it's fascinating to me because, when you
That's
think
very
of
true.
when you think of like all these filmmakers talking about, oh, Netflix is so brave, Netflix is so open and experimental,
Lets you do what you want.
and Netflix lets you
That's
do what
I
you
mean that's
want. Yeah.
exactly what what's his name, Martin Scorsese literally said. Netflix just gave me the money and let me do what I want.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously,
yeah.
he's Martin Scorsese, so it's a little different. But pretty much a lot of filmmakers have said that.
Yeah, Ava DuVernay has said that on multiple occasions.
Yeah, there you go,
I mean,
Ava DuVernay.
I imagine that's why Charlie Kaufman kind of made. I'm
Yep.
thinking of ending things for Netflix because I'm sure if you took that to anywhere else, they wouldn't want it. So
You know what I think it is, man? I think they reached a point in their budget where they were just so astronomical because, again, if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, man, that's high fantasy. That's like Game of Thrones type budget, and Game of Thrones is the most expensive show of all time. So I guarantee it was a budget thing where they were like, we are spending like billions of dollars on this show, and we don't think that your, whatever it is that they wanted in the show is going to work in live action. It works in cartoon, but not in live action. It's probably what they told them, and they were like, nah, that's not going to fly.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see where it goes. I mean, I do hope for the best, but I hope that this doesn't lead to a this kind of obsession with searching for the one piece, the one missing link that we're missing.
One
because,
Piece?
One Piece. I mean, that could be a fun. That could be a fun
There you
adaptation
go.
too.
Adapt One Piece.
Yeah, that could be fun. But I mean, I don't want them hunting for something. I don't want
That's
them
what they're
forcing
doing,
things.
man. If
But
you're being honest, even The Bodyguard. What was the movie called that we liked? The Gina Prince.
the Ogar.
The Ogar.
No
I'm
guard,
sorry.
but they didn't micromanage that either. I mean, that's and I like movies that are fun. I like movies, like Ogar, like Project Power, which I haven't seen. I mean, it could be terrible for all I know. I haven't seen it, but I like movies that are just fun, dumb action movies on Netflix
Yeah.
because
There's a lot of those.
there's an audience.
Action?
Yeah, there's a literal audience for that. Like I remember when I was a kid, like I used to love just being home and strolling through like the TNTs and the TBSs and the FXs, like when I was on summer break and just surfing through the channels and watching whatever random action movie like Die Hard 4 or whatever would be on. So like I really enjoy that aspect of Netflix having that genre piece for people. I don't want all of those to go away for the expense of, oh, we can only make the highest of art action, kind of things. Like I feel like right now Warner Brothers
I don't
is kind
think
of,
that's what that is. I don't think that's what they do at all.
I mean, I think there's definitely studios that get trapped in that. I mean, I think Warner Brothers.
Studios. I was gonna say
Yeah.
Netflix doesn't do that.
No, Netflix doesn't do it. I hope they don't become that. Because I think Warner Brothers is kind of like the perfect example of a studio that kind of had, for a long time, they had that reputation of like, oh, we have the summer blockbuster every single July, middle of July, we're gonna have that date. And I remember for years it was either, I think it was like 2007, it was like a Harry Potter movie. 2008 was The Dark Knight. 2009 was something else, and then either way, they always had that like July date.
And
Like
they started getting to
yeah.
DC. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But then in 2013, that started falling off when they put that July date for Pacific Rim, right? And you could see like
RIP.
yeah, I mean RIP, and it didn't do well, and that was where you start to see
It did good in China.
the great in China, and that's another thing about Netflix. Netflix doesn't even try to sell to China, right? So it doesn't like. I mean, they do to a certain extent of like they're making content for everybody, but they're not like specifically reaching out after Chinese audiences because they don't have like a reliance on like theaters and studios and all that kind of stuff. They're also the most accessible brand too. But going back to the falling off point, yeah, when like you're starting to force the summer blockbuster, and we hype up this whole event and it doesn't end up landing for a majority of the time, audiences are going to start becoming untrustful of the brand. And I hope that the Netflix brand right now is a really strong, really powerful brand that just keeps holding down, whatever they hold down for. I just hope they stop. I hope they don't stop investing in creativity and originality in filmmakers and start investing in the franchises, because I feel like that's the problem with the rest of Hollywood right now. So
Yeah, but there's no denying RB3 that's kind of what they're doing. You can argue that they're doing it in a different way with letting creative directors kind of have their fun, like a Gina Prince Brightwood.
Yeah, Breath of
That's an example of maybe a fun version of that, or a cool version that they're giving her a shot to do a cool immortal action movie. But at the same time, there's no denying they literally said that that's what they're doing. And they've honestly tried it again, like I said, with the whole, hey, why don't we try anime? You know, anime has some of the most creative, world building, amazing, beautiful IP ever in the history of art. You know, why don't we just take that and introduce it to American audiences through live action? And again, they're not the first one to think of that, obviously, because there's been other studios that have tried to adapt anime into live action. And they tried it with Death Note, and ironically, RB3, which I still think it's funny that Death Note kind of disappeared, even though they said they were going to make a Death Note 2, because it got so many clicks and it got so many views. That movie got a ton of views, like a ton. I know we didn't like it necessarily, but because I saw it once and that was it. But there's a lot of people that saw that movie, like a ton of people. But that's an example of what they were trying to do. I wanted to switch up the question, RB3. I was watching The Social Dilemma on Netflix, ironically enough. Did you see that?
I haven't seen that one, no.
Yeah, it's okay. I wasn't a fan of the narrative structure of it.
Okay.
They had the documentary section, and then they had this live action section. Part of it worked, but part of it didn't work for me necessarily. But they were talking about, obviously, social media and algorithms. And I listened to The Big Picture, a movie podcast that I listened to from The Ringer. I've mentioned it before, Sean Fennessy and Amanda, who talk about this idea, RB3, that to me kind of felt a little bit bad. And I know you're a big defender of Netflix, but they brought up a good point about the idea of this algorithm movie, where they're able to take pieces of things that people like from other movies, just put them in a blender and just put it inside a Netflix movie, drop like 50 mil and toss it on Netflix. And it ends up being movies that are kind of just average or just okay, silly action movies.
Wait, a Netflix documentary said that?
No, the movie podcast.
Oh, okay.
That I listened to. Yeah, The Big Picture was talking about the idea of an algorithm movie. And I was like, that's a really good point, because I worked in a production company for a little bit, and you know that. But one of the things that I actually never talked about this, because I'm not supposed to, but again, I don't work there anymore, so I can say it, is the idea of selling data when it comes to viewing content. And what a lot of people don't know is that every production company does this. And mine was tiny, so I can only imagine like the Warner Brothers, the major studios, who sell data on viewing habits as far as what you're viewing on their tool or from their library, and the kind of content that people watch. And what they do is they see what people like the most from these movies and what people like the most from this content. And it's usually like fight scene, action scene. That's the scene I rewatch the most. And it's usually like, you know, really basic, kind of very dumbed down kind of stuff. I've seen that stuff before, and people sell that for data, and then people give that to film creators or just filmmakers and producers and say, give me this, make me this kind of content. That's actually something that happens. I can confirm it because I've seen it happen. And they were talking about the idea of this is kind of how Netflix makes their you know, Project Powers is a perfect example of it, where it's kind of a silly, you know, action movie with a cool concept. And it stars Jamie Foxx and, you know, JGL. Perfect. Like that's an algorithm movie, or an example of it, where it's just like action, cool thing, cool cast, cool concept. Boom. 2 hours or under 2 hours. You know, they even have the time set out. Like if it's over 2 hours, it's always under 2 hours for some reason, or 2:01 or 2:02. I don't know if you've noticed that. Almost like every single Netflix movie or action movie. What do you think of that? Because I thought that was like a really good example of something we should be avoiding. We shouldn't want to do this.
I mean, Netflix.
I don't like that.
Every studio has their own like.
Every studio
thing.
does it. That's true.
Every studio does it. I mean, Netflix is more personal because you're literally on Netflix like all the time. It's more of like a personal experience. But I mean, you don't think Sony got like mass supercomputers that hey,
Yeah,
if
they do
somebody
that.
makes this pitch and, you know, they're going to analyze every single little tiny detail about it
But
and
what?
figure out how
Who
much
better
money it's
than
going to make.
Netflix though? Because the thing about those companies is that they do it a lot of it based on survey, a lot of it based on viewing habits, right? Necessarily whether it's on their streaming service or whether it's somewhere in their library, but a lot of it is based on survey, right? But either way, they sell it as data as far as how long people watch it, what are they watching, what scenes are they watching. The thing what makes Netflix different is that they have some of the most detailed numbers. They don't even release their own numbers. They're so protective of their numbers and their stats that they don't even release it. At least studios kind of release it.
I mean, that's proprietary information. I mean, that's what they
true.
know exactly what works and what doesn't work, and they're not going to give away the secret sauce like that because next thing you know, if something pops off on Netflix and they say it does this many numbers and this many streams, that gives Hulu the access to be like, oh, that did that. Well, if we do this on our network, it's going to do the exact same thing. So they have a competitive advantage for the fact that, you know, they are private and secretive, and the fact that they're first to the race. But you know, this whole idea of like selling data and selling ads and viewing habits and listening habits, like, you know, I'm an avid podcast listener, and that's what all podcasts like essentially come down to, especially with a service like Anchor or with Spotify. Like, they're literally like all about listening to, figuring out data, how long you're listening to a podcast. I mean, literally, if you go on Anchor, you can figure out exactly when is the exact average time people check out of your podcast. And if people really dig into it, they will see, oh, people like it when I talk about this. They don't like it when I talk about this. Maybe we should, like, I told you this off camera, but when we did our Matrix episode, and then like we had a really, really high viewership in like the first 6 minutes, and then it just took like a deep like spike, like on the Anchor thing. I was like, what happened? And I went back and re-listened to the episode, and literally at that exact moment, we were like, yeah, Matrix represents a lot about queer theory, like LGBTQ representation, and all you hear was a beep, like most people were just checked out.
And I feel like that's the story of all of our content.
Yeah.
I swear.
People are like, oh, this
people
is a
tune
good
into-
concept.
They're like, yeah, I like these guys. Oh, I like that Sabrina. Oh, this guy's cool. And they're like, oh, they're talking about what? Human rights? Ugh. I don't like human rights.
Yeah.
You click away. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, you're right. I just feel like it's at a different level with Netflix. Can I give a little something away? Just, I have never talked about this, I don't think, on camera.
Oh, sure.
But I read that article that last year when Netflix changed their viewing numbers. It was specifically with The Witcher. I don't know if you read that article.
I haven't read that one.
It might have been Variety or Hollywood Reporter talking about the way they measured the viewership of The Witcher. I still haven't seen the show, by the way. I'll get to it eventually. I saw The Haunted in Hill House instead of The Witcher. Sorry, guys. But I had to pick which one, and I was like, Haunted in Hill House. But they changed it as far as what counts as a view or as a watch. And I read the entire article because I feel like I'm that guy where I'm like, people skim these articles and then they write their hot takes about it. I always read the whole thing. And I read the whole thing. And that's the biggest load of BS I've ever heard in my life. And I know why, because there was another counter article that was written where they said the reason why they did that and why they changed it is because of what I was saying, RB3, because they weren't turning a profit. So they wanted to do something that got investors and that got stockholders excited. So what they did was, in order to get these people excited and back on the Netflix train last year, is they changed what counts as a view. And they did it in order to get people like, wow, 90 million people watched The Witcher. That's incredible. And if you look at the numbers, it's like 2 minutes. And it's like, what? Yeah. That's not watching The Witcher.
I mean, that's what music streaming.
That's a 10-hour show.
But that's what music streaming is too. I mean, music streaming is literally like you listen to like 10 seconds or 15 seconds of a song.
It depends what platform though, because in YouTube it's different than Facebook, for example. Because Facebook is the worst when it comes to a video. Facebook, if you scroll by the video and it's like it plays for like 1 second, it counts as like a view. Versus YouTube, at least YouTube has like this, semi-coherent version of it where what counts as a view.
Yeah, I even think on YouTube it's still like 15 seconds. Like
it is pretty low on YouTube, but Facebook is just different level because if you can like scroll by it, it counts.
Yeah, no, but I mean they inflate numbers that way, and you see a lot of people.
They inflate numbers, but Netflix inflates numbers times a million, dude. Because I read that and I was like, you're telling me like a 10-hour movie. It's a 10 episode, 1 hour each. And if you watch 2 minutes, that counts as watching The Witcher. That's, come on, bro. Like, that's silly.
I mean,
that's insane.
yes, but I mean, it's also insane when you think about how they count real TV ratings, and it's like one in every 1 million people have like one of these special boxes that they that they send out, and they get these magical numbers coming out of nowhere too. So even if Netflix is figuring out ways to like maneuver the streaming game to boost their viewer numbers, their content number, at least it's not as egregious as like every other industry, like the music industry, or any other industry like that. So I
think it is just as egregious, if not more. I think it's equally as much. But I was just thinking of that because I still think it's kind of funny what people count as a view.
But I mean, I do think. Listen, you have to put it like again, Netflix. If we think the 2 minute thing is ridiculous, we could think it's ridiculous all we want. Doesn't matter. Netflix might have interior data that says, hey, 2 minutes is substantially longer than people are willing to stay on anything on Hulu, anything on Amazon Prime. And it's funny too because I'm looking at this chart that says Netflix has 85% of people who are willing to pay for video content online. It has 85% of that market. Amazon has 65% of that market, but it's not because people are paying for Amazon Prime. They're not paying for Amazon Prime Video. They're paying for Amazon Prime, and they just have Amazon Prime Video on top of that too. So listen, in the same sense, essentially Amazon's like buffing their numbers too, because they get to say, hey, we have this many Amazon Prime subscribers. But that is not necessarily exclusive to the Prime Video aspect of it. In fact, I think in terms of cultural relevance, Amazon Prime Video might be the lowest, and that's no dig to Amazon Prime Video because I love all their content there. So.
Well, that's what makes Netflix different, though, and that's why it's always going to be the elephant in the room of Netflix, is that every other studio or every other company that has a streaming platform has a business besides that. Yeah. They're the only one that just make content. Amazon has Amazon, the website. That people go to Amazon not for watching movies. People go to Amazon, like you said, to order stuff. Right. Disney has Disney, their entire empire, the theme parks, everything. I can go on and on with all the other major ones. But it's that idea that they're making money outside of their streaming platform. It's not just a streaming platform. It's theater numbers, it's merchandising, it's, Harry Potter brooms and T-shirts, and you know what I'm saying? Like, they still sell that stuff, versus Netflix is not selling that stuff year-round like other major studios are. So I think that's always going to be the tough part of Netflix, is they're trying to find a way to be that one business that just sustains itself without going outside the box. And that's why they're looking for a franchise, and that's why they need merchandising, because they want to have Netflix stores like they have other stores that represent other major IPs and content that people love, from DC Comics, Superman, Batman, or Universal with Jurassic Park and all this major stuff. Like, that sells, man. That really does sell, and it helps them.
Of course it sells, but when you talk about, like, I think the problem is that other studios put the merchandising and the other stuff first before they think about the movie or the content or whatever they're making, and I want to see Netflix fall into that. When you think about people like Warner Brothers didn't start because they wanted to get bought by like another company. Like, they didn't start that way. They did start in the same way that Netflix started, just wanting to make movies, just wanting to make product, just wanting to make content. The difference is that it got bought by AT&T. The difference is for Universal is that it got bought by Comcast. The difference is for Columbia Pictures is that it got bought by Sony.
But those major companies sustain it. That's the thing, right?
Yeah, they sustain it, but they could kill it whenever they want. And I don't want to see Netflix go down that road. I don't want to see Netflix have to be beholden to some kind of corporate stockholder overlord, whatever like that. Like, I would enjoy to see them continue to be as self-sufficient as possible for as long as possible. Because I think that's definitely the way that we're going to keep seeing. They're literally the only place right now that's giving us adult content, original content, medium budget content. What do you mean?
I said adult content?
I mean, not adult content, but like a content not for 14-year-olds. But like they give us the medium budget stuff. They give us so much more than what the normal studios would even have to offer. They just shouldn't make the same mistakes as following the other studios and go down this path of profit over content. Like that should never be the approach.
Which is what they've done so far, so credit to them. Either way, guys, we're going to go to a break. After the break, we're going to be talking about a little bit about Netflix controversies because it's kind of hot in the news right now. So make sure you guys stick around.
This ain't funny, so don't you dare laugh. With the 4/5 divide you in half. You getting at me equals a bloodbath. You do the math, take you out the equation.
Check out this snippet from our latest episode of Netflix Roulette, where Kay sits down with timestamp lead Ayanna Taylor. Enjoy.
666. So dark. Dun, dun.
666.
Some scary movies, maybe.
Ooh, dark British independent movie.
Okay.
So today we'll be watching Monsters Dark Continent. Let's see, get some more info on this. So it's came out in 2014. It says an American platoon stationed in the Middle East is thrust into battle with a breed of tentacled aliens whose rapid speed threatens human survival.
Oh man. Okay. When I gave you those numbers, I didn't know it was gonna be this. It was gonna be dark.
Check out our new website on geeksofcolor.co/first-cut to check out our reviews, our videos, and articles that pertain to everything First Cut related. Check it out.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? We're back talking about Netflix. Now let's talk about a controversy that's kind of in the news right now, and that's over Cuties. I don't know if it's a Netflix documentary or a Netflix series or movie, but I know you wanted to talk about this, RB3. You brought it up. I'm very curious about it because I honestly don't know too much of what the origin story of this is. So if you want to fill me in, that'd be amazing because I'm curious about it because I know it's very controversial.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Cuties, and I haven't watched this film, or I'm not exactly sure what it is. I believe it is a film. It's a fictional film from a French director named, and oh my God, I'm not even gonna even remotely try to say this name. I apologize, y'all. But the whole concept of this movie is that it's supposed to be about the real life sexualization of young women, young girls, and it's supposed to be like this coming of age story that deals with the consequences of sexualization of young women. Now, what happened with Netflix? Oh, I'm sorry. Also, it premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, received a lot of acclaim, and Netflix. And actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the director actually won the directing award at Sundance. So it's a very highly critically acclaimed film that deals with, and I'm reading the plot directly off of Wikipedia here. The plot revolves around a French slash Swahili girl with a traditional Muslim upbringing who's kind of traditional values in internet culture. According to the filmmakers, the film is intended to criticize the hypersexualization of pre-adolescent girls. So that's kind of the story. Has a lot of gist, had a lot of Hollywood buzz. What Netflix decided to do with this movie is that they decided to put the hypersexualization of these young women to the forefront of this movie with posters of young women and, scantily cladded, apparel and whatnot. Now, again, I haven't seen this film, but according to a lot of critics who I follow online, including the great William Bibiani, I believe, tweeted about this, what exactly the film is criticizing is what the marketing campaign kind of perpetuates. And this kind of like using young women to like sexual fantasies to like sell and market stuff is despicable and has terrible consequences on the young women themselves. So that kind of happened. And when these crazy little posters and nasty images came out, there's a huge AltRight campaign that kind of came out. And this is according to a tweet that I saw from Lexi Alexander, who says there was like an AltRight campaign that was kind of launched, really backed by allegedly Facebook dollars, to kind of have a smear campaign and a smear thing going against Netflix. Now, if that is true, I 100% buy it, because I do believe, for one, corporations do totally do stuff like that all the time. And for two, especially when you look at the people who are really going hard, rah against cuties, and you really dig into like their profiles, yeah, it's a lot of Trump supporters, and it's a lot of like alt-right kind of people. Even our esteemed buddy Andy Signor had to find a way to shove his fat mouth into the conversation and insult Mike Kalinowski and Jake Yakoveta over the weekend, because Jake Yakoveta literally tweeted about the movie, the Cuties movie, and then I think Mike Kalinowski literally just liked the tweet about it. And Andy Signor went on a rampage, harassing people and being a loser like usual. So it just goes to show, like, there's definitely a side of this argument that got adopted by the right. There's a side of this argument that the left is trying to make, but it's kind of hard to make that argument when it's a little child pedophilia thing. Like, it's kind of hard for people like me and people on the left to kind of be like, hey, like, watch this movie, because it's kind of hard to get behind the marketing campaign of it. So it's really to fault of Netflix. This is really a lot of what Netflix is kind of on doing. But, I hope people do watch the film. Eventually, maybe I'll watch the film, but I don't know. So,
I guess what confuses me is what makes that alt-right connection. What exactly is it? Because I did kind of see that too, and I never understood why. When you click on the profiles of the people that are mad about it, they are some weird, like it's like some really bizarre like alt-right shit. It's not even Trump supporters.
Yeah,
it's like some extra weird shit, and you're just
yeah.
Ugh.
And you've been seeing
Are you
it.
sure you're not a pedophile?
Well, but see, that's what's crazy too, because I know people like my girlfriend Destiny who also sees, like, it's an easy thing to see on Twitter, like this poster of these young women like twerking or having their chest out or whatever, and it's just weird, like, and you kind of
it's very easy to be against that. I honestly, like, off the dome, if I just see this, I'm kind of like, ugh.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that. I have no interest in seeing
as you
that.
should. I think any rational person should have that reaction. But I think a rational person who looks into the information a little bit more and realizes that there's a little more nuance behind the situation, that it's not necessarily the fault of the filmmakers per se. It is the fault of the Netflix brand itself. But listen, I heard, I don't know. I guess I don't follow like these alt-right people, but it could be possible that something like an Alex Jones might have stumbled upon this, or somebody,
someone amplified it, right?
Yeah, that's what all these things come down to. Essentially, is that it's an amplification of like this kind of like this kind of unwillingness to and the right kind of has the settlement of like Hollywood's the far left, these far left pedophiles, like these Epstein people, like all this kind of stuff. So when a story like this comes from Netflix, it kind of mega perpetuates it, especially when Netflix has done nothing but shown that they're usually on the progressive side of things when it comes to politics, and especially when it comes to representation and black leads and black creators and stuff like that. So it's a little easier to see what side of the fence they lean on versus what side of the fence people who are kind of got caught up in the smear campaign land on. So it's tough. It's a weird situation, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's so bizarre to me. I mean, obviously, there's so much here that is so weird and so bizarre when it comes to the concept behind what exactly they're upset about, what exactly the argument is. It's just weird. I mean, is it like if you subscribe to Netflix, you're a part of this or something? Because that doesn't make any sense. I don't know, because it's kind of the idea of like, what responsibility does Netflix has on the content that's on their site? If there's something that someone finds bizarre or offensive to them, does Netflix have a responsibility to take down that content? It's obviously the whole YouTube thing where it's like YouTube doesn't want to claim any responsibility for the kind of dangerous content that they have. Does Netflix have that same problem where they should be responsible for the content that they have?
They should. I mean, I think any corporation has to be responsible for the content they're making. I think, they got to act accordingly on it. I mean, they did apologize for this whole Cuties thing, because it is kind of a gross misrepresentation of like the movie itself. But, it's definitely not an advocation for like pedophilia or, sexualizing young women. That's just not what the film is about. Unfortunately, what ends up happening, and I think a big crusader of this came from Ted Cruz, who, at least according to his article that I'm reading, tweeted out like a change.org petition, and Netflix stocks has actually gone down recently too because of this, and it all plays into this kind of idea of like, yeah, like when there's a swarm of people, particularly from one kind of political ideology, to kind of make this, switch of, oh, we're going to protest this now because of a social marketing campaign, a smear campaign. It's the easiest thing to kind of accomplish, like in this era. But again, there's nuance to the conversation. Netflix needs to be responsible and needs to own up to whoever the marketing person for this is needs to be fired. Like that's for sure, because they brought this controversy onto themselves. But I think also too, they need to be more. I think with that comes with being protective of the filmmakers, is being protective of the marketing. But I think they also need to be protective of, what a political ideology or whatever kind of brand is going to launch, whatever they're going to launch at them, and be prepared to be defensive of it. Because I don't think they should compromise their art for the sake of being scared of offending people. But I do think they should be able to know how to mitigate that when these kind of situations happen, and not fumble the football like they did with this Cutie situation. So.
Yeah, because obviously there's going to be a lot of stuff as far as content on Netflix that doesn't fly with everyone, right? I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of action and violent scenes and sex scenes in Netflix that are probably a little bit much for someone around the world, considering they have so many subscribers. Right? I mean, they're a worldwide product at this point. There's bound to be someone who's like offended by one of those things that's on Netflix.
All right.
I told you, RB3, about the whole controversy that happened last year with this Jesus movie that came out. It's like a Jesus parody movie. I think it's Brazilian. But a lot of people were using the hashtag cancel Netflix because of it. And it kind of brought up that same concept of the idea that is Netflix being like, haha, Jesus sucks? Or is the filmmaker being like, haha, Jesus is silly, Jesus sucks? Like, who is the one that is, unsubscribe from Netflix because of this one bizarre, weird movie that costs like $1 million, and it's like a tiny itty bitty budget. I saw the little bit of it, and I was like, this is like a nothing movie. I don't think anyone would have talked about. I think someone literally had to search for this.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what it's even about. But it's that idea, right? That, I mean, there's bound to be a lot of people who are offended by that. But I took no offense because I was like, who cares? But that's an example of like, there's bound to be a bunch of religious groups that are going to be offended by something on Netflix, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, they can't dodge a controversy. Like there's no way in 2020 to dodge any kind of controversies. Even it just comes down to how you address it. What is your corporate policy? What's your stance? Is there consistency with that? And where are you going to end up landing on situations where, hey, if it comes down to a marketing mistake, yeah, address it with the marketing team. But if it's a film and the film itself is actually, if Cuties in and of itself was this hyper pervy weird movie and Netflix just decided to put it out, I would cancel my Netflix today. Like I would definitely do that. But I think, they have to know that their audience isn't, they have to know that not all audiences are as intelligent as they maybe hope they are. And it kind of toes the line, right? Because studios and great content creators and great content producers have to trust their audience to some extent and has to cater to their audience to another extent, right? It has to be that perfect balance. I just hope they don't lean towards being too overly catering and being too safe and, being too brand friendly. But I hope at the same time they don't keep, they don't make content or release content that's weird either. So, yeah.
What do you think about the future of, this is such a complex and weird question, but it's something that I'm thinking about because I'm thinking about movies in the past, RB3, kind of deal with stuff that are kind of, if you bring them to today's 2020, it is kind of like, what do you think of the future of this sexualization of minors, considering Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Richard Linklater?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of, is he a pervert? You know what I'm saying? Like, Where's that other movie where it's a beauty queen and it's like a 10-year-old girl who's doing like a strip tease, and at the end of it, you know which movie that is? It's a famous movie. I forget.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, is that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, are they? Is it gonna have some sort of commentary behind it, or is it not gonna have?
Did it have commentary? It's a movie that came out a while ago.
Yeah, like, I mean, I think Little Miss Sunshine had a good amount of commentary about, like, about pageantry and like child pageantry and like how kind of weird it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought Cuties was, by the way. But that's the first thing I thought of. But I was like, oh, this has already been out. It's an old movie. Came out forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just the thing. Like, people don't use their brains to like make arguments most of the time. It's usually just like to have a political side or to have a political agenda.
What do you think of that? What do you think of movies like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where it's clearly an older person going after a minor and being like, "Yeah, look at that high school girl."
That's just weird, man. I mean, that's just not right. Like, that's just,
is that not weird? Like, am I the only one who like goes back and says maybe that movie?
I mean, you gotta look at a lot of '80s movies like that. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
The
like
Breakfast Club,
it's most of them.
Yeah. There's a lot of them. And listen, I mean, it's a different time, different. We're not gonna see any more of that ever in any movies anymore, ever.
That's what I'm saying.
We're not gonna see any more of that. We're not gonna see any more. I remember American Beauty kind of had controversy because
American Beauty is a perfect example.
Yeah, because it literally had a 17-year-old actress who just popped out her breast and showed them in the movie. And that would never happen in 2020.
That can't fly.
Yeah, that can't happen.
To be honest, I don't even know if that could fly 20 years ago.
Yeah, in 1999. Well, both of her parents are on set, so they're okay with it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, that's just the thing, man. I don't know. I don't know where they're gonna. I don't know. There's no room for that anymore in this culture. I don't think. And I think, and that's why it's funny because you'd assume that, but then and you think of a movie like Cuties, and that's why you're like, bro, what? Why would they do something like this? Like, why would they, like, in this time period, in this age, release something like this? But then we look deeper into the story, it's a lot deeper than that. And that's, you kind of, there's a part of you that always wants to operate on this, like, assumption that everything's going to be meaningful, everything's going to have commentary, there's going to be a reason for something. But then, we reach this, like, really cynical, evil point in, like, our society where we can't trust anything anymore. So we're just automatically going to assume that something's terrible and pervy and disgusting. So.
To be fair, I feel like that's a lot where society is leaning.
Yeah.
And I think people are hyper aware of it. I might be one of them, maybe just because I'm an old man now, where I'm a little bit disturbed by what I see from Gen Z and the generations below me, considering that it literally takes one scroll through TikTok and my God, literally like pour the holy water on that platform. Because all it is, it's 13-year-olds literally twerking and being super hypersexual. And you're like, you're 14 years old, 13. Any 40-year-old can be scrolling by. This is like a perv city. Like, that's the first thing I thought of, if I'm being honest. It's like, it's becoming a little too easy to access this kind of stuff now. It's becoming a little too mainstream for me. And I think that's why people are so delicate about it. And I don't know. I'm trying to play devil's advocate because I'm like, maybe they should be kind of protective of these little girls, because I think we should be.
We all should be, absolutely.
And I know I have to bring up TikTok, but it's true, man. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong.
Listen, man, I'm not on TikTok like that. I mean, I only just check.
I'm not either. I just go on a few times and I see like Star Wars movies, and then random 13, and I'm like, what is this? This is not right.
Yeah, man, it's weird out here.
I don't know. I think people at least should be kind of aware and protective of that. I just think it's still very ironic that the same people who are doing this are the same people who support someone who literally went into a dressing room filled with 15-year-old and 16-year-old naked girls and openly talked about, this is real. Miss Teen Universe, teenagers. Someone who was literally actively perving on teenagers is the president of the United States currently. And he openly said it, and that is a tape that is still available literally everywhere. You can look it up, where he just admitted that. So, that's the kind of people who are defending this. It's a little too ironic, man. So, either way, that's how we end the episode. Oh well, what are you gonna watch on Netflix next? I guess that's a fun question. What do you want to watch on Netflix next?
I don't know, man. I'm thinking of Ending Things is really good. It's one of my favorite movies.
You gonna rewatch that? You don't want to see something new?
I mean, I don't know what's new. What's popping new on Netflix? I mean, I've been trying to get through
The
a lot
Witcher.
of The Witcher. I don't know about that one.
I'm just kidding.
I actually what did I just start on Netflix? God darn it! Oh, I just started something I can't remember, but
Really, you can't remember?
I can't remember. There's so much content, but Cobra Kai's on there, so I heard that's pretty good.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen The Witcher. What else haven't I seen on there? I haven't seen the new anime stuff they have on there.
Oh, a lot of people talking about Girlfriends, huh?
What is that?
That's good. The TV show from the '90s, not original content, but
TV show? Girlfriends? I
yeah,
don't know what
Girlfriends,
that
yeah. With old girl from Blackish. He knows Blackish.
Not Janelle Monáe.
Tracy Ellis Ross. Yeah.
Oh,
I
I have Janelle Monáe on the mind. Sorry.
Janelle Monáe, nah. But yeah, it's a lot of good stuff on Netflix, man. Definitely a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, that's probably where I'll go. I'll go to somewhere anime-wise, and maybe The Witcher eventually.
Yeah.
I just have to be mentally ready to sit down for 10 hours to watch Henry Cavill wave a sword.
Yeah, I don't know about
will.
The Witcher, man. I don't know about that one.
I'll see it.
That
I'll
one
see it
ain't for
eventually.
me, but I could dig it. I also been checking out that one Hoops, little basketball comedy that they got on there, a little basketball animated comedy. That one's cool. The Astronomy Club is
Interesting.
also all right too. So
I feel like their docs are always kind of fun.
yeah.
I want to check out Capital. I just saw the trailer for it, and I was like, oh, cool. I'll check it out.
yeah,
On my recommended.
I gotta see that too. I gotta see the Social Dilemma, man. Everybody's telling me about it, and I gotta check it out.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'm not a fan of certain things about it. I'm not a fan of, again, they do the live action narrative stuff, and I wasn't a fan. The ending stuff kind of makes sense, but I just didn't vibe with it. I don't know. I'm just like very particular about my docu style.
Right.
They also do a spoilers, kind of, not really spoilers. They do an inside out thing where you go inside the mind of a social media and you see a
Ooh.
guy pushing buttons and going like, ha, let's do this. And I was like, oh, this might be a little too silly for me.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel
For
that.
something that's supposed to be serious. But you can still watch it. I mean, it makes sense. There's a lot of stuff in there that is stuff that I've been saying forever and that obviously people know, like you and me know about this stuff, about social media and about interactions and how they want to keep you on the site and sell you stuff. And, it's very good, knowledgeable stuff that I told my parents about.
Dope.
Either way, guys, that is our episode for the meaning of Netflix. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Apologies for the controversial stuff that we got into. Hopefully you still vibe with us. Either way, subscribe to First Cut TMO if you haven't done so already, and make sure you subscribe to First Cut right here on YouTube. You can follow me at Squad Leader Ace, and you can follow RB3.
At Director RB3.
For the First Cut team and the Meaning of Podcast, we are peace out, guys.